you that you don't pretend you're, is it San Diego where the owner got into a little bit of hot water? Which is very appropriate for tonight, because how countercultural and can you get? So a very important thing for tonight is to stay focused, understand that we're saying hello to people who are not here. And so for those of you who are watching us, please feel free to send me an email or send an email to the chapter to say how you like the simulcast. I want to do a quick shout out to Discover Video, because they are providing this to the chapter and they are posting this broadcast. Say hello, James. So that anyone can watch the simulcast, and it's being archived. So we have an ASTD channel that you can click on and see all of the programs that have happened before. So feel free to go back, see what we've done before. We've had some excellent, excellent programs. So a couple of things to keep in mind since we are training professionals, and that is there is always an exit. Please take advantage of that if there's an emergency only. There are places of respite for those of you who have those biological urges, and you don't need to let us know when those are happening. And I just want to highlight the networking guidelines. You know, part of our mission is to bring our content to our professional constituencies, and part of it is to build the relationships that each of us needs to have in order to move our careers forward, to find out about the field, to be really top-notch professionals. To do that, we've created a culture that is really very inclusive, very cooperative, very collaborative, and you'll see from the tenor and the feeling within the room that it's all about building something for the future, building a relationship, having a really good time that helps you in your career. So in terms of networking, we've all been in places where it's a drive to network, it's a drive to get a name. We don't do that here. We build the relationship and then we go from there. So thank you for coming tonight. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Martha, who will then talk about some of the recognition of new members, new people who are here tonight, and talk about some other things too.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to add my welcome. So there are a couple of things that I have the privilege to do tonight. First of all, let me do a sound check. Can you guys back there hear me okay? We're good? Okay. So first thing I would like to do is recognize anyone who is a new member of the ASTD SEC chapter or a new member of ASTD National. So if you fit in that category, hey, great, congratulations and welcome. Anybody else? Congratulations and welcome, welcome. Great. So for the folks who are new, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact anybody who's on the board. We have these ribbons. If there's anybody in the room who's thinking of becoming a member, the same thing. We'd be happy to talk with you a little bit about the advantages of being a member, and we are so happy to see everyone with us tonight. Second thing I am doing is introducing you to the resource table, which is right here. The resource table has two functions. One function is to talk to you about what's happening in our local ASTD chapter as well as national. And we're featuring information about being a power member. A power member is someone who is a local member as well as a national member. And if you're a national member, you can, if you're a local member, you can get a discount on national membership. So there's information here, but also feel free to talk to a board member about that. We also, on this resource table, give you the opportunity to leave information about what you do. So our board member, Tom Speak, has some information here. Tom, I'll call you up in just a second for your business. So anyone is welcome to bring information they'd like to share. We just ask that at the end of the evening, you gather it, anything that's left, you gather it back up. So The last shout out I wanted to do is our president, Ross Tartell, does monthly columns in Training Magazine. And so we're very happy to feature his latest column. It's talking about focus groups. So with that, I'm turning the mic over to Tom.
Thanks, Martha. I'm Tom Speak. I'm the current webmaster. I just thought I'd let you know that if on the morning of Saturday, June 21st at 4 a.m. you have the urge to go on the ASTD website, it won't be available. Yeah, sorry. Because we will be cutting over to a new version of the back-end software. A company called Wild Apricot provides all the services, the registration, and all of that. We put the content on, design some of the pages. They've come out with a new version. They have ported ours over so that the administrators can get used to it. We have what I'm calling our sandbox, but on the 21st it will turn over. We'll then put those changes in over the summer. The timing is great because it is after our last meeting. It's before you'll really need the website to register come late August or September. But there will be some changes. And now, by the way, now is the time. If you have something you really like or really don't like about the website, now is the time to let us know about it. Either me, at this meeting, the next meeting, we've got two more, this meeting and two more meetings before it happens. So you'll hear me at the next two meetings so everybody hears about it. Or Martha is on the website team, and Ann, right next to Martha, and H isn't here tonight. In the summer, however, you will get an email about the website. Please take notice of it, and as Christine pointed out earlier, not only take notice of it, but please read it. Don't you, oh yeah, there's that email Tom talked about. You know, it will have hints and kinks. We're writing a new help page, so I put it aside, read it. We'll probably send it out twice just in case anyway. So, have any questions about it, as I said, or comments, you've got a chance, or send it to webmaster@astdscc.org. And now it's Laura.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everybody. So I have just two quick announcements tonight. The first has to do with talking about helping the chapter by volunteering your time. And each month I come up and I talk a little bit about the volunteer opportunities that are available. But two quick questions. Do we have any students in the room by chance? Not tonight? How about, I'm sure we may have some folks that are in transition. And the reason I bring up those two particular groups is that what a great way to advance your career or start your career by spending some time volunteering with the chapter. And there's so many ways to be involved. And Tom just talked about the website. Well, with the huge change that's happening, we can certainly continue to use support if you'd like to learn more about website design or helping with the uploading of information and creating new pages, all of that. We also would love to have more support in our programming area, in advertising, in social media, all of these different things, in membership. If this tickles your fancy at all, please reach out to me via email, and I'd be happy to connect you to the board member that we can get you started in doing some volunteer work. And there are some volunteer opportunity forms on the resource table. The second thing I'd like to talk about is very exciting. And how many of you attended the ASTD Southern Connecticut Got Talent contest last year? Okay. And our winner happens to be in the room this evening, Mr. Cooper. Yay. Well, you may have received an email earlier this week asking for individuals that might be interested in presenting at the June 9th event. We are looking for 4 presenters for that evening, and I already actually have potentially 2 presenters. So please, if you're interested, you need to come forward quickly. And I'm the contact person on the email. You'll receive the email again, I believe, later this week or next week. So if you're interested in presenting, please let me know, and then I'll go over the details with you. But it's a terrific event. We're looking for 12-minute presentations on a training tool, a technique, or a specialized skill, and there is a grand prize of $100 to the winner of that Got Talent contest. And then we do have 3 runner-up prizes of $25 each. So I'm hoping tomorrow my inbox will be slot with interest for this event. So thank you. Now let's see, Elena?
Hi everyone, I'm Elena Campopiano. I'm the sponsorship director for the chapter, and my role is to help bring in sponsors and vendors to present their products and services to our chapter, to help bring awareness to and educate our members of opportunities that could help you in your businesses. So for the year, we've been successful in having a sponsor for each of our events, and we do have a sponsor tonight, Right Management. I'm looking for 1 sponsor for the month of June to close out our year, and I'm also looking for recommendations for next year as we bring in our season in September through June for 2014-15. So if you work in a capacity where you deal with and manage supplies and vendors in your businesses, and you have someone that works out really well for you that you want to showcase or recommend them to come present to our group, please let me know. There's information on our website, or you can find me tonight or shoot me an email and send me your contact name, and I'd be happy to follow up with them to find their interest. But tonight we do have Right Manager as our sponsor. We have Matt Bent and Francie Sinat here. We also have our sponsor table in the back here with their information, so please check it out. And I'll give the mic over to Matt or to you. Okay. So Francie Sinat. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Francie Sinnott, and I'm with Right Management, as Elena said. It's great to see all these friendly faces in the audience, and we're delighted to be sponsoring such a great program. So thank you for that opportunity. I think many of you probably know Right as an outplacement provider. We are very well known for that globally. And in addition to that, we have a significant talent management practice which crosses the proverbial employee life cycle. And by that I mean we do everything from assessment of talent, both internally and externally, leadership development, team and individual executive coaching at all levels. We're finding that organizations want somewhat of an accelerated executive coaching deliverable for more junior level talent, employee engagement consulting, and career management consulting. What we're hearing, and I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you, that clients, organizations are very much concerned with engaging and retaining people. This is a few years ago, companies said to us, they're lucky they have jobs. And they didn't want to talk about retention and engagement, and that's changed dramatically. I just want to highlight 2 areas of work that Right is involved with now. One in the area of career management consulting, or career development mobility, I think is really more accurate. A large pharma organization came to us and said that they wanted to be very proactive about showing their dedication to their employees, who had said on employee engagement surveys, we really want career development and management, and we will leave the organization if we don't get that, is basically the message. So we partnered with them to develop an internal career management system that is part technology, part coaching, and has been extremely successful. It's going to be rolled out globally. Their engagement scores have gone up, significant ROI. Everything that we do, we want to produce ROI for our clients. So that's a really hot topic. This is a huge initiative, but it's something that can be scaled to different kinds, different size organizations. So just want to point that out. The other area I touched on, leadership development and coaching. We are working with a local client doing global assessment and development centers. And again, this is high potentials. It started out as a high potential program, and now they are rolling it out to diverse candidates, to new employees that they're high performers, potential high performers, and covers just about every practice area that we're involved with. So we are doing the assessment, we're doing leadership development, back-end coaching, and often team coaching for the other members of the team who might be involved in the program. So just two areas that are very hot for us at this point. If you're interested in talking more about it, you can speak to myself, my colleague Alan Smith in the front, and Matt Bent. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sissy McKee, and I am one of two program directors here at the board. And my co-chair here, my co-director is Debbie Jackson. And I am going to start us out with some introductions in a moment, but I wanted to do a quick little editorial announcement here about how this program came together tonight. So you might guess the board spends quite a bit of time thinking about what are the programs, what are the topics that can add value to the people in this room. And we work very hard at that. And certainly diversity is one of those important topics that bears discussion, especially given our role supporting diversity initiatives in each of our respective worlds. And we certainly did scour the landscape to find some courageous, strong voices in the diversity space. And that was all by plan. So the part that wasn't necessarily by plan, or I didn't know to expect, was the amazing energy and commitment of our four guests with us this evening, who really pulled up a chair, sat down, and were intent that this evening would be a discussion that was interactive, engaging, informative, and provocative. And so I want to just acknowledge that's extraordinary, the time that you all gave and the energy. So thank you for that. That doesn't always happen. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening. And maybe I could ask our panelists to come on and take your places here. And so our moderator is Veronica Holcomb. And in 1985, when Veronica launched the V.J. Holcomb Associates, she became one of the first female executive coaches in corporate America. It wasn't that long ago, and if you think about it like that, but it's true. And since that time, she continues to be an executive coach. She's board certified. She also is an adjunct coach with the Center for Creative Leadership, and her clients now number over 1,000. So she spent a few hours in that space, just a few. And Ronnie is also a published author. Her book is, and I'm going to remember this, give me 1 second here, Ready, Set, Grow, and it's 10 Success, right? We're going, yeah, we know that book. 10 Success Strategies for Winning in the Workplace. She's also a contributing author to Dr. Warren Bennis's Leadership Defined. So some good chops in this space, if I do say so myself. And so it's my honor and privilege to welcome our moderator this evening, Veronica Holcomb.
Thank you, Sissy. And thank you all. I want to thank Sissy. I want to especially thank Nancy Urell, who is a very dear friend and colleague of mine. I have so much respect and affection for this woman. And thank the board. And how smart are you to choose this topic for this time? Very bright. So on this day. So as Sissy mentioned, I've been coaching for a long time. And I have my 10,000 hours in. There's no question. So I guess that makes me a master coach? It does. Okay, it does. So I've been married 38 years. Does that make me a master or an expert? Master wife? Yeah. I guess so, because in all those 38 years, I've never wanted to divorce my husband, ever. Bless his heart, I love him. Now, it's true, I wanted to murder him. Many times, many times. And I was sharing with the table, some of you know that my husband this is his second week home from having a kidney transplant. Real big deal in my house. We've waited 5 years for that. Real big deal. But women, ladies, you know, when men are sick, are they strong and courageous? No. They're the biggest babies, aren't they? Bless their hearts, but I do love him. I know that's a stereotype, and some stereotypes are true. No, we're not here to talk. We're not here to talk about stereotypes tonight. No, we're not. We're moving beyond that. I'm a leadership development coach, but I've had to deal with diversity for all of these years, because if you're going to be a strong and effective leader, you have to pay attention to this. This is your job. And so I've had the opportunity to do a lot of programs, design, deliver programs for women of color, for leaders of color, to be involved with diversity and inclusion professionals in terms of doing research and that kind of thing. And it's an important work. So I'm very happy to introduce our very, very good-looking and accomplished panel. Let me introduce them. We have Nancy Didia, and Nancy is with Boehringer Ingelheim. She is a certified executive life coach in the David Rock's brain-based coaching methodology method. She actively works to advance efforts around diversity and inclusion as a member for the Center of Talent Innovation and as an advisory member with the Hidden Brain Drain Task Force. She has 25 years of experience in this space and in management. And then we have Vanessa. Vanessa Abrams-John is the Chief Diversity Officer at Praxair. And Praxair has 26,000 employees in 50 countries. She's a corporate lawyer by training and has spent a number of years in top firms on Wall Street and again with Praxair. We'd like to welcome her too. And then finally we have Marjorie. Marjorie Durbin is a managing partner with the Hudson Research and Consulting firm. She is a senior fellow with the Conference Board's Human Capital Exchange. Marjorie also collaborates with her clients to deliver diversity and inclusion initiatives, global leadership, and talent management programs as well. And she has written many articles and is a very popular speaker for global conferences. And let's welcome them. Let's give them a hand, please. So what I'm going to do tonight is we have 3 or 4 questions we'd like to pose to the panel, and we're going to pose the question, have them answer it, and at some point we'll be including you in as well. We have a few questions we'd like for you to answer as a table team, but I'll share that with you in just a bit. My first question: what are the challenges as we think about what's going on in diversity today? It is so different. I started in corporate decades ago, and today our organizations are global. We deal with multiple time frames or time zones without even thinking about it. I don't know about you, but my family even looks different. It's true. There are just many more interracial marriages. The world has changed. And with this backdrop, ladies, what are some of the challenges that you are seeing as a result of the trends that are going on? You want to start? Whoever wants to start is just fine.
I'll start.
Okay.
I mean, one can only look at the statistics in the U.S. Census and even the last national election that we had to understand that you now have to think broader. If you want to be a company of the future, if you want to be sustainable, if you want to be strategic, you can no longer think of talent in a narrow way. You have to, if you want the top talent in this world with globalization taking place, you have to make sure that you are looking at talent with a broad, wide net,
Right.
or else you're not going to get the top people. And
Exactly.
I think, our CEO and our leaders have sort of come to that realization. We're a B2B company, so we don't have the same sort of market brand that a Google or a Target may have. And so the old way of seeking talent and developing talent and sustaining talent doesn't work anymore in a world where countries are now integrating, where if we want a Russian employee for our Russian office, we can look to the University of Chicago. We don't have to go to Russia anymore. I mean, students are being educated all over the world. I grew up in the Caribbean and I was sent here for college. And so, students you go to college now, there's students from every background being educated. I tell my kids every day, you now have to compete with students in China who speak multiple languages for a job here in the U.S. So as a company, I think we have sort of taken a step back to say if we want to maintain our competitive edge and differentiate ourselves from our competitors, we have to change the way that we acquire talent, the way we develop talent, the way we promote talent.
Okay.
The old way of doing things can no longer work.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Marjorie.
Can I ask you to use the mic?
Are these mics on?
Use the mic, because we have a little trouble hearing in the back.
For me or the women or all of
For
us?
Vanessa. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, it didn't sound like you were on mic, so, yeah, okay, thanks.
Thanks.
I totally agree with everything that Vanessa said, and I also want to add to that, that in terms of the internal piece of attracting and retaining the best talent, we can no longer look at, just the traditional pools because you have to keep going deeper and deeper. So if you want to attract the best talent, you have to cast a much wider net. But I would also say that there's also a real business imperative in addition to the talent imperative, which is that organizations in the developed world, in the US and Europe, our growth is slowing very, very dramatically. And more organizations are becoming global in order to capture the growth that the emerging markets are experiencing. And in order to be successful at that, it ties right into the talent, but it also means that organizations need to understand what are the cultural implications of doing business in different regions of the world. How do we look like our consumers? If it's business to business, what are the ways and the customs that business is being conducted in this local country? Because if you don't get that right, your investment is just totally going to be, just bomb. And you really want to have a positive start early on when you are reaching across borders. And then the final thing that I would just say is that as a result of all of these dynamics, we're seeing a rising middle class in the so-called BRIC countries. I'm sure you're all aware of this, although it is starting to slow. And we also see the power of the purse. Women are a much bigger portion of decision makers. Harvard Business Review recently had an article of how many women make the business decisions in corporations. Hispanics represent $1 trillion. So in order to really capture the dollars that are out there, organizations need to be very inclusive and understand the changing dynamics of the world we live in.
Good, thank you. Nancy.
Yeah, I think the she economy is, definitely something we have to be concerned about, not only from a patient perspective, because we know in healthcare that women make a lot of healthcare decisions for the family. But when I look at what's changing and what's staying the same, I think what's changing is there's a bit more acceptance around race and gender topics. I think there's more acceptance to LGBT as a topic in the workplace, in society as a whole. But I also think we're challenged by people with disabilities, with the incoming, when I say challenged, I don't mean challenged with that legislative change in terms of getting people to self-identify in the workplace. But the bigger overarching piece, I think we're challenged as educators, as learners, as professionals, is the cultural capital that we need to have in our organizations. And that cultural capital is really critical for us to be competitive globally in the marketplace. And that's the ability to be agile and flex between cultures. And global organizations like the one I'm in, the one that Vanessa sits in, it's no longer what America says goes. It's finding the leader who knows how to navigate in the countries that we're doing business in, whether it's the BRIC countries, most of us are in there. So cultural capital is, to me, I think the biggest change that we're seeing, and that people really need to embrace that in a different way. How do you measure that, right?
Thank you. All right, let's just take a couple of minutes, if you would, please. We'd just like to have you have a quick discussion, maybe 3 minutes. What are some of the challenges that you're facing in your work or in your organization? Let's choose a team leader. The team leader will be the individual who traveled the furthest to come here tonight. That person, the team leader will be the person at the table who traveled the furthest to come tonight. Hey, team leaders. Now, as leaders, team leaders, you can delegate this task if you'd like. But we'd like to have you let's take 3 minutes very quickly, and then we'll have just 1 or 2 report outs. What are some of the challenges that you are facing in your work or in your organization? Another minute.
Here, most people don't want to do. No one wants to think they're going to die.
30 seconds. Are we there? Okay. Let's just get a couple of responses. Who are team leaders? Team leader, this woman, let's say, you're here. Who's our team leader? Dan? Brett. Stan, Brett, you have 1 minute.
So what we got was actually acquiring the right talent. That was a big issue for us. And then another one was the old regime on top. How do you really diversify it if they're still in control? So, you know, you can talk about it, but there's only so far you can get up to the ladder before, the old boy club kind of just stops it. So that's what we were coming up with.
Exactly. It's about leadership. Another team who'd like to share? Here? Who's our team leader?
Hi, we had a few good suggestions. A couple of people mentioned the generational diversity within organizations when you have boomers who are reluctant to retire and new millennials and Gen Y and younger people who want those boomer jobs. And go away. And we also talked about how globalization is creating language problems within organizations, both in writing and in speaking. And when you're communicating with people in other countries far away, in different time zones and other continents, how do you bridge those gaps? What else did we talk about? Oh, the graying of the workforce. How do you deal with older workers? We didn't really come up with any answers. We just listed challenges. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else who's burning to speak?
Okay, at our table, a couple of interesting points that came up. One was that U.S. managers are unprepared for the unique cultural challenges for their multicultural hires. They don't know what those hires' needs are. Also, someone expressed that companies are hiring people who may look like their consumer before they have created a good multicultural environment for those people to work in. And someone said there's seeing insensitivity to the amount of time multicultural hires need to acclimate to the culture here where they're working, and they're too quickly being perceived as failing when in fact they just might need some more adjustment time.
These are excellent, absolutely excellent. Anyone else burning with something different? One more here.
We have one, and as a team leader, I'm going to pass the microphone. This sissy hero's got a great example in a global company.
Thanks, Rich. So I work in an organization now where I start my morning at 6:30 a.m. with Singapore, and they're 12 hours ahead. So if it's 6:30 a.m. for me, it's 6:30 p.m. for them. If we have to meet twice in a day, then I meet again at 9 p.m., which is 9 a.m. their time. So not only does that extend my day, but I have to be sensitive to the fact that these people work remotely, they work from home. If I start at 6:30 a.m. my time and I talk to them till 8 p.m. and I want to extend it, that means I've gone through their dinner hour and their child, putting the kids to bed time and a lot of other things. And I think there's a reality about time that we can't, it's a reality, and we just have to be sensitive to that when we're working across those time zones.
Thank you, Sissy. Okay, excellent. Panelists, question number 2. What kinds of things are you doing in your organizations to address the needs, the challenges that you have, and some of the challenges, the kinds of challenges that we're hearing from our audience here? Who'd like to start? Everyone's mic on.
Yeah, I think we're on. So I'll start. I mean, I think as a global organization, we have 10,000 employees here in the U.S. and another 35,000 around the rest of the world. So a total of 45,000 in 45 different countries. We speak 37 different languages. And how do we communicate to them effectively? Well, one way, I don't know if it's effective, but we are able to communicate using link technology. So we're able to have web meetings where we can see, and sometimes we can IM, so we have instant messaging as well. We even allow emoticons, much to, and emoticons are very interesting on a global basis. But the fact that people can talk to each other, I think, really helps helps them feel encouraged that they can check somebody's light status if they're available, if they're in a meeting, for a quick check-in, and it saves a lot of emails. Or you know that if you're leaving a message for Germany at 5 o'clock tonight, when you come in tomorrow morning, there'll be an answer for you, that type of thing. But on the graying of the workforce, you know, where I really like that terminology. Anyways,
I'm not sure I do.
think the firm grasp on the obvious, right? Just because I think we see a graying of the workforce, right, doesn't really mean that there tends to be, well, boomers aren't technically savvy, and Gen Y is technically savvy, and I propose a different mindset that the boomers are rewiring, not retiring, and they're learning a lot, and the Gen Ys are actually, in my view, with all due respect, they're technology dependent. I'm not sure they're so savvy. And so how do you bridge the difference between those two? And then the last piece I'll just say, when we heard about diversifying the old regime, and how do we get those leaders to understand, well, I think you heard a couple of us talk about it, it's all about the business for them. And if we cannot present the business case to them from a rational perspective, hey, Joe, John, we're going to be losing market share if we don't have the right people out there selling our products or services or relating to the customers. So when you all go, we can't have another group of white guys leading this because that's not what the customer base is going to look like. I'm not saying you all have to go, but we need to represent, you know,
communities.
Right.
Communities.
Please strike that from the record.
You know, I just wanted to say I've seen, I'm an external consultant, so, you know, I've seen really, really fantastic work being done in a lot of organizations around bridging the gap in terms of D&I initiatives internally and what's being done externally. So I'll give one example that I think is great. Financial services firm had a presence at a conference for high net worth women of color. And instead of just going and sponsoring and having a booth at whatever, they brought in a cross-functional team of people, including brokers, including HR, including line managers. And the outcome of this was that they all became much more educated about this very important target group. They got business, and they also really were able to cross-fertilize ideas in terms of how they might continue to work together in the future. Another example is, I think that in the D&I space, we haven't really done as good a job as we need to in terms of defining what good looks like. And I think it's very, this stuff is complicated because you're talking about unconscious bias, you're talking about people's history, you're talking about things that people are uncomfortable dealing with, they don't have a language to deal with it. And so what happens in many organizations is they create, which is great, they create a senior leadership D&I council that is in charge of governance. And then they'll have the affinity groups or ERGs, employee resource groups, that focus on specific targeted groups, returning veterans, working parents, LGBT, you know, whatever the case may be, to create a welcoming haven so that people feel that there are others like me. But I don't think a lot of organizations have done the best job of saying, well, what does everyone need to do? And I've seen examples where with toolkits where you're able to really say, what is our strategy and how do we link best practices and resources to that strategy so that people have an idea of specifically what do they need to stop, start, and continue, whether it's from the talent life cycle, whether it's from managing a project in terms of who do I invite to be on the project, and so forth. So I think there's a lot of really exciting work that's going on with people, you know, trying to make this better. I don't think we are there, and I don't think we'll ever be there because the end goal continues to move.
That's right. Thank you. Vanessa?
Yeah, so I think for Praxair, when we were sort of new to the diversity conversation, and I'm actually their second diversity officer. Many of you may know the first person, Sam Mathis, who was our first diversity officer. And so I think for our company, it was a new conversation. And a lot of our leaders were still stuck in the old way of looking at diversity, not diversity and inclusion as a business strategy, but more diversity as a sort of a charitable thing to do for the women and the colored folks. And so I think, Sam sort of laid a nice foundation of changing the paradigm, changing the message to make sure that people understood the business case, that, we understood that our communities are looking to us, are looking to do business with companies that look like them. As a company in 50 countries, we had to be mindful that also diversity may not look and feel the same in different countries. We also had to look at our talent outside of the U.S. Our growth strategy outside of the U.S. was actually, going at a greater pace than our growth strategy in the U.S. So we had to take note of that. If we're expanding in the BRIC countries, who are our customers? What do the communities look like that we live in and serve? And so, one of the things that I did when I came on board was to create diversity councils in our different regions so that they could align it with their business strategies. And I made sure that it didn't include HR people. It was all business leaders above a certain level. It was all senior leaders. The CEO was very clear that he considered it a business strategy. So we started to include it in everything we said. Praxair values these 6 things, including diversity, in every conversation, in every newspaper article, in every sort of internal or external communications. We try to weave in diversity so that people understood it was a business strategy. It was a business imperative. It's not, wasn't sort of the nice thing to do. So that's one of the things we did is we changed the conversation around diversity. And we took it away from being sort of this siloed event where, every 2 years we would bring in a vendor and have some diversity training. So I worked with our training and development director to include it in our everyday corporate training offerings. So now our managers are being trained to be managers of diverse teams. They're now being tasked with being inclusive managers. And they now understand that it's something that they will be judged on. It's going to be part of their year-end review. How inclusive of a manager are you? Are you engaging every member of your team? Are you positioning all of your team members for success? Are you including diverse thoughts and perspectives in the way you solve business problems? So that's another way we sort of changed the conversation. And the last thing, which was an issue I noted when I came on board, was that my white male colleagues from the law department were feeling disenfranchised around this whole diversity conversation. So we could, I couldn't ignore that because it had to be a journey that the entire company had to go on. So we now have this annual Diversity Day where we celebrate diversity in all aspects and everyone. And we talk about diversity in all our global regions, not just something here in the U.S. And so we include everybody in that conversation. We've become more inclusive about the conversation, and now everybody feels that they're part of the discussion. We have a business panel now of people of varying backgrounds, including white males, talking about how they've used diversity to create positive business outcomes. And so just the audience hearing from these male leaders, really, we now have everybody more engaged in the conversation. So it's not sort of this nice side project that we're doing.
Exactly. Yes, thank you. My work with the leaders of color has evolved so that after I was doing a particular program for a client, and after 3 or 4 years, everyone wanted in. And so now, even though we continue to call it multicultural leadership development, it's very, very, very inclusive. And frankly, it's more fun. The program is richer. My life is richer as a result. Now, I'm sure you're finding this to be extremely provocative and stimulating. I know you have questions. I am going to give you some time to ask those questions in a little bit. Okay, one more question for the panel. What more needs to be done? What more?
You know, I think just getting back to the white male again, I feel a need to redeem myself. But I think engaging the white male is really key to the success of any diversity and inclusion strategy. It should not be an exclusion. That group in particular is the most represented at senior levels in most organizations, and yet we talk about them. We talk about that group as a group that's a stigma, and they're not. Many of them, especially at the leadership level, are great supporters. So the more we engage them, I think that should not stop because many of us are already doing that. I think on another note, what else needs to be done is continue the acceleration on the pedal. And what I mean by that is society is ready for change, not completely, but more able to absorb the necessary changes that we need from a variety of diversity dimensions. We're looking at diversity beyond race and gender and looking at it in a multitude of dimensions, not just diversity of thought and experience, but also looking at things much more broadly in a socioeconomic status. We need to build alliances rather than divisiveness. So leveraging with, I would say, the not-for-profit communities that are doing such great jobs, social entrepreneurship, micro-financing, those types of things. And we do something with an organization called Ashoka. And really leveraging, I would say, the social aspects of it, where corporate can contribute either the intellectual capital or in-kind capital. So I think by bridging society more, which is our role as a corporation, within society, we can help change the world to become more exclusive, one person at a time. I still have work to do.
Who'd like to go next? Marjorie?
Yeah, I just to kind of add to what you were saying about bridging. I know that one of my clients is health insurer, and they're looking very much at healthcare disparities, how different racial and ethnic groups don't participate in insurance or don't get. We know that there are really tremendous differences in terms of how people are treated for different diseases and the severity of disease when they are treated. It's at a much more advanced stage and so forth. And really part of this bridging is by working in the community with respected leaders rather than, we all know that we're going to have more of an ear to people that we know and trust rather than a healthcare insurer or a pharmaceutical company, because these are big companies that don't necessarily have the trust in the community. So, as an example, they'll work with local churches, and this is a model that was very successful in the civil rights era in terms of taking buses to get people out to vote because they were. Black people were really attacked if they went to the polls. They were actually at risk if they went out to vote, and so by bringing people out in big numbers, there was more safety, and people were more willing to do that. So I think that that's an example of bridging across the society. I also think that we have a lot of work to do in terms of breaking down these silos and weaving diversity and inclusion through different organizational processes. How do we recruit people? When we bring them into the organization, how are they onboarding? What messages are they hearing about what this organization cares about? How are we training people? Are we holding people accountable for these behaviors in the performance management process? with succession planning. It's kind of a joke, but a lot of organizations use the 9-box, and there'll always be a slate of diverse candidates, but somehow they're never ready. They're never ready. The white guy, he's you know what? He's very bright, and he's never done this, but it's a good stretch opportunity. But the diverse candidates, somehow, they just... So we have a lot of work to do in terms of really embedding these things throughout and creating more linkages between the D&I function and the line functions. And just the last thing I'll say is headquarters versus field locations. Really looking at all of the best ideas don't come from headquarters. In fact, often they don't come from headquarters, and making sure that there is a vehicle to hear what's happening out in local countries in terms of innovation and ideas. So,
Thank you. Vanessa.
Well, to piggyback on what Marjorie just said, I think what really needs to be done, not just at Praxair, but in many global companies, is just to operationalize diversity, where I always joke with our CEO that I will know that I'm successful when you don't need me anymore, when I no longer have a job here in this role. Maybe send me back to the law department, but when I've worked myself out of a job, where it's no longer a special project, where it's just part of when we meet. We talk about safety. Where's the exit sign? We talk about year-over-year progress in so many other business strategies. Why not with diversity and inclusion? It's something that really has a clear business outcome. I mean, there's so many studies. We can look at the recent financial collapse. Banks that had diversity at the top.
None of them did.
They, because women didn't make the same decisions, risk decisions that the men did. Yeah. And so when you have diversity of thought and perspectives making certain investment decisions, I mean, we're all bright people in here. You know what happened, when you're not all thinking in the same way, and that way collapsed in the fiscal crisis. You have diversity, it survived. So I think for us, we just need to include it. I keep saying to our CEO, it should never be a pet project. It should never be a side project. It should never be, we give diversity training every 2 years. Everybody sort of checks it off on their calendar. It should be just a part of the way we do business. And we're seeing that. It's now part of our training and development. Every manager now who gets training has to get diversity training. It's now going to be part of our onboarding process. It's just going to be part of the way we do business, and I think that's a journey that we're on. And the other part of the journey also is the succession planning. Again, we look at the metrics, we study the metrics every month, and they're all congregated at the bottom. The pipeline for diverse talent is just not moving. And so I think part of the discussion is awareness. Once I brought it to the attention of the leaders, they sort of felt sheepish about it. So what do? I said, unless you're saying that these people are not bright, why are they not moving at the same rate as everyone else? So we have to look at the way we sponsor talent. We have to look at the way we create learning opportunities for diverse people. If you have a special project, why do you keep giving it to the same guy? Take a chance on this quiet lady in the corner that never speaks. Give her a chance. Maybe she fails, or maybe she actually does better than the person you've been depending on. So it's part of just bringing these things to the discussion table when we talk about succession planning and talent management. And now they're aware. Now we've asked every leader to sponsor 2 diverse talent. It has to be someone that's performing at a high level into a leadership role.
That's great.
And now those managers have cascaded it down to their direct reports. So that's a journey that we're on this year. And, it's going to be a continuous putting your feet to the
pedal.
Yeah,
to the metal.
The pedal, yeah.
Could I make one comment on both what Vanessa and Marjorie said? First, on the patient side or the healthcare disparity side, Boehringer Ingelheim takes that very seriously. In fact, we are leading an effort within the industry with other pharmaceuticals such as Pfizer and Merck, and really being much more inclusive at an institutional level to attract patients who have the disease prevalence to the trial. So for example, African Americans and Latinos have a higher disease prevalence for cardiovascular or metabolic disease. And yet trials, just like hiring, sometimes you get the first person you can get into the trial without looking at disease state. So that's a very important step. And then talking about how you relate, Native Americans or the American Indians have very high disease prevalence for metabolic disease, diabetes especially, alcoholism, depression, obesity. And how do you get them to participate in a trial? You go to the medicine man. And the medicine man is the trusted source of getting to them. Just like, the Black church is also a trusted source of information. So we are very actively involved with pharma, the organization, and the FDA in making this change happen. Because the only way, if we really say that we're in the business of, improving the quality of patients' lives, then we have to know what it's like. And you opened this up, Ronnie, with changes in family. We have children that are being born that have African heritage, Asian heritage, American, different heritage, and those drugs metabolize differently. They metabolize differently in me than they do you. And so every patient is, an important subject. So I wanted to say that, and thank you for bringing that up, Marjorie. It's a very important topic. I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Thank you. So my mother is 87. She'll be 87 next month, and was raised in the segregated South. So you can imagine what was going on when she was a young girl. And she shared the story with us when she was with her grandmother on a bus. And the rule was you could sit in the front of the bus unless a white passenger wanted that seat, and then you had to move to the back of the bus. And so my mom and her sister were with her grandmother, and they were on the bus, and a white passenger wanted that seat. And my great-grandmother said she wasn't going to the back of the bus. She wasn't going. And there was something about her demeanor and her tone of voice. He did not make her. Now, if you met my mother, she's the nicest person in the world, but don't mess with her, all right? If there's an injustice, she's not having it. And it's just how weird that thing, it seems to be in my children as well.
That's genetic. We should test for that.
It's certainly a part of who I am. It's in my DNA, and it's part of who I am as a coach. It's why the whole diversity piece has been important to me, embracing that in leadership development. And I want to suggest there's something in these women that I'm interested in. What you may not know is they all three have been nominated for SHRM's Diversity and Inclusion Leader of the Year. One of them will be awarded that honor May 15th, I think it is. So I have one question, Sissy, that we didn't talk about, because as I talk to diversity and inclusion leaders, or as I watch the news, maybe I'm just getting old. I mean, seriously, I don't know, I just shake my head. Sometimes I'm discouraged. I really am. And so what keeps you going? Where does the passion come from? Ladies, any one of you, just take the question.
Well, I think for me, what keeps me going as a Praxair employee versus what keeps me going as a human being. For me, I've always been given chances. I've worked in very male environments and very white environments, working, in Wall Street law firms, and people believed in me. And I felt that I wouldn't have succeeded if I was not given an opportunity to speak and to be put on a big deal, So I feel almost that I have to pay it forward and just make sure that, my children have an example of how to be a human being in this world. But also, as a Praxair employee, I really believe in our company. I mean, it's my first, what we call as lawyers, in-house job, where you go from working as a, in a law firm environment to working for a company where the company is your client. And I remember when I first went there to interview, everybody had been there 30 years, 20 years, and in law firms in New York City, every 5 years, people are gone. So I thought, oh my, this place must be really special. I met people like Judy Coco, who had been there for so long, and everybody just seemed like a family. People were sharing stories of, oh, we were the first female engineers 20 years ago, and all this, So I just felt this sense of camaraderie, and the company really has a strong sense of discipline, operational discipline. I mean, since I've been there, we've weathered the fiscal crisis very well. Our stock price has just continued to go up, and I have a strong love. I know it sounds corny, but I like our company, and I really want to retire from there one day. And so we all get a little stock now and then. So as a shareholder, I feel like I really want to usher this company into the future, and I think companies who are not embracing diversity and inclusion will be left behind. And that's sort of, what drives me as an employee at Praxair, to just make sure that we stand above and beyond our competitors, that we have an edge, that we are doing things differently. We're not the old boys network. We're not, we are going to embrace this thing, and we're going to go into the 21st century just as a strong competitor and with the best talent. And, our CEO really believes in it, and I have his support, or else I wouldn't be doing this. But that's sort of what keeps me going.
Good, thank you. So, Marjorie.
What I love about this field is that you're always learning, and for me what it does is it really marries a real passion that I have for social justice with my interest in business, and I really feel like doing this is advancing a social good. I really believe in human potential and us getting better as a species. I think that it can be very discouraging because it's one step forward, 2 steps back, a lot of stops and starts. It's a long journey, but I certainly think that we've seen tremendous progress, and I think we're going to continue to see tremendous progress because demographics really is destiny, and the world is changing, and those who don't adapt, as Vanessa said, are really going to be left behind, and the organizations that capitalize on these differences are really going to be the winners. So to me, it's very fulfilling, very exciting. I just think I think there's so many things about it that are endlessly interesting, and it's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Nancy.
Yeah, for me, I think it's, well, Sissy knows this about me, the old mythology of Sisyphus pushing the rock uphill, right? And you push it up and it rolls back, and you keep pushing it up. But I feel very supported. I feel that there are teams of people behind me helping me push that rock. And if it's one person a day, I'm lucky. But maybe one person a week that will come and say, when you made that remark in that town hall, or when I had lunch with you last time and we talked about something, it's changed my view on things. And if I'm able to influence one person to either be more courageous, to speak up, to challenge themselves, or to come out and to self-identify, which I've had to do as an executive, and that has encouraged others to do, I kind of get a little teary-eyed. It warms my heart that people, it's very difficult to come out in the workplace. And when I know that I'm a role model for others, And on those days I'm having a bad one, I remind myself of all the good ones. And I save all those voicemails when people call and thank me and all the thank you cards. So it's the people that make me get up in the morning and do it.
And I want to add to that, Nancy has just been a tremendous supporter of mine. I've been in this space 16 months. And I remember when I first came on board, I've been a practitioner working as a lawyer, and our CEO asked me to take this role after Sam Mathis passed away suddenly. And I called Nancy, and she was very gracious. She invited me over to Boehringer for lunch, and she's been there, and I thank you. I'm very appreciative, and because of your leadership at Boehringer, I remember going to our CEO and said, we need to expand this diversity thing to include LGBTs, people with disabilities, and at first he balked a little, and now, you remember when I called you and said...
She invited me over to speak on the topic. I'm like,
Because
I knew.
Now we're sending a group of 10 of our LGBT employees to an Out and Equal conference this year. I mean, it's we've changed the game, so...
One by heart. So we can change the world.
One
person at a time. Yes, one person at a time. Alrighty. So we don't have much time left. I take a little more? Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do, back to your table teams. I don't know if you like this idea or not. You're looking at me weirdly. But back to your table teams. I'd like you to answer the question. What can we as learning professionals, diversity and inclusion professionals, but what can we do to support our employees or support our clients, to support the people in our work? What can we do to help them manage some of the challenges that you've identified, that we've heard discussed here tonight? I'm going to give you 5 minutes for that. What can we do? And leaders, team leaders, why don't you just point to someone and delegate this responsibility, okay? 5 minutes. 2 minutes. Little less than a minute. Okay. All right, team leaders, let's have it a 1-minute report out. Again? Okay. Well, you did a good job.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, okay, 1 minute. All right. So we came up with a few things on ours, and so we were talking about accountability. We were also talking about how to bring or celebrate that movement, that action. So, you know, if you're seeing the distance between the top level all the way down to where diversity should be and having it bring it up, the people at the top don't know what they don't know. So how do you get them there? So it's almost, well, we got to hit them where they're at. So if they're on their way out, if they're seasoned, probably something like the Branch Rickey Award. It's who brought Jackie Robinson into baseball. So something that hits them from where they were children, something that hits them as a youth, because that's emotional. If you can get them to identify with something emotional, it will move the action, and you're now celebrating the action instead of the player. So that's what we came up with.
Good. Next, who'd like to speak next? Look at this table. Who's our speaker? We talked about what specifically leaders and trainers could do, and we had DA over here was sharing that all their leadership, all their trainers are certified in D&I, certified in diversity and inclusion. So they very naturally, make sure I'm saying it right, can include it in the diversity training. They made them experts so that it very naturally gets woven into the fabric of what they're doing. Is that? Okay, there we go. Yeah, and all the, right, and all the, not just diversity and inclusion, but all the trainings, but they made them, it's like making somebody an expert in Six Sigma. They bring it to everything they do. So they made them experts in D&I, and they bring it to everything they do. Thank you. Next table. You'd like to speak? Okay.
So we talked much more about what can you do when you're in the classroom, when you're dealing with individuals one-on-one. And there it's reaching out, making sure people get the opportunity to contribute, and so regardless of who's in the room, there is that opportunity. But then we took it one step further and talked about teams. So it's important to not only touch the person on a personal basis, but also a roles, responsibilities, clarity basis, so that the roles, responsibilities, and clarity are unencumbering to the interaction, so that the person has a way to express themselves and really contribute.
Thank you. Let's go here. Who's our speaker?
Okay. So we talked about a couple of different things. The first was about how, as training organizations, if we could do something about creating training that is within the specific cultures of the participants, that one of the conversations we actually spoke about earlier was sometimes the language barrier is a bit of a problem, and creating that safe environment is quite helpful. Another thing that we spoke about, another comment, was when you think about succession, it was a direct commentary on the panel comments, is that if you really just focus on the performance of the individual, the exact quote was, if you dress them up all like clowns and you look at the performance, then that's really the thing to look at. And of course, we can think about what that means and the implications of that, but that was a point for us. And also mentoring programs. It was more on, I think, the less positive side of the equation, but to say something about how there was a program instituted wherein the mentees yet still happened to be people who had already overcome challenges. So somehow the people who were in the biggest need of that program yet didn't quite make it in for whatever the reason. So what could we do about that more specifically?
Thank you. And here? Somebody's. Oh, be right back.
Hi, I'm Rich Cooper, and what many of you may not know about me is I'm a white male.
Thank you for coming out.
I appreciate the inclusion that I feel here at the meeting. It's been a tough night. No, we're taking the conversation maybe at our table in a little bit of a different direction, or a little bit maybe more provocative, and maybe you can help me articulate it as well. Like creating a safe environment to be able to ask those harder questions. There are certain assumptions that we should know this, or we should have this, but maybe based on let's say, speaking for myself, my upbringing, I have blind spots. But if I trip over that wire, just because it's a blind spot for me, it's a bigger issue, let's say, than for someone else. So did I do it? So, and based on what happened today and other comments by the rancher who's been grazing his cows there for free for 25 years or whatever it was, it's embarrassing. It is, you just kind of, the height of the ignorance it's embarrassing sometimes to be that white male. And I actually grew up in a pretty inclusive, I'm first generation American, and I grew up in a pretty open-minded family. I'm sure I have my blind spots, as we all do, but still, it's embarrassing, and sometimes you do feel a little bit under attack. And I'm not speaking to feeling like I'm a victim by any means. I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities that obviously other people haven't. But there's this thing that I will make mistakes, and are people less forgiving to me because of how I look? Am I being judged that way too? I don't know. So.
I'd like to comment on that.
Please.
I totally understand. I mean, what I have made sure to do as a diversity officer is not to exclude white male. In fact, I make sure at least once a week I'm having lunch with my white male colleagues to say, hey, that last diversity event we did last week, how did it come across to you? And fortunately for me, I was able to establish good relationships with my client base when I worked as an attorney for the company.
where they trust me. I also have, colleagues from the law department that I'm still good friends with, and I make sure to pick their brain every now and then to say, how is this coming across to you? I want to make sure that we're not excluding anyone. And sometimes they're brutally honest. They're like, you know what, that Women's Day event you had last week where you didn't invite them in, that doesn't help. And so I make sure now that we invite them in. And if they choose not to come, then fine. But you know what? A lot of them come even out of curiosity. And we make sure to just have, because we now have a blind spot in this diversity space, that we may be disenfranchising others. And so, it's something that I personally am very mindful of, and I applaud you for speaking up, because we do need your voice, and we do need to make sure. And I have white male managers. Suddenly, this white male thing has become sort of this topic of conversation, but who have come to my office almost tiptoeing, close the door and say, I need to talk. And they'll say to me, I have a diverse person on my team who is not performing. But because of all this diversity conversation going on around here, I'm afraid to give that person feedback. Because because of me that person leaves the company or is not happy, I'm afraid that I'm going to get some backlash. And I'm like, the worst thing that you can do to a diverse person is not give them feedback. Because then they'll never grow, they'll never develop, and you just have to make sure that you're treating them the same as everybody else. And so, these are the types of hard, tough conversations that I think as diversity managers, we have to make sure that we're having, that at the end of the day, it's talent that's rising. It's not somebody's gender or their skin color. What we preach at Praxair is to make sure that you are looking at the broadest slate for a position. But the best person, the most talented person should be selected, or else we're going to lose the hearts and minds of our white male colleagues, and we don't want to do that.
And I just think the key is to help the person who's interested have that eureka moment, right? And if you're willing to learn and be open and share, as you said, we all have blind spots. I don't know of any diversity and inclusion strategy that's been successful without engaging white men. And most of them are successful because the white men have engaged. So there isn't one diversity company out there that will tell you that they got to where they are because they didn't include white men. So that, again, is more than half of our population. So it's a very important source of success for most companies in standing behind this. And if you can tell your story, and I know Sissy was very successful in doing this when she and I worked together, in getting leaders to talk about how they saw something through a different lens. That's the key. And that's what we were talking about, one person at a time. And I said I'd shut up.
Okay. We love hearing you. We had one more table, and we're running out of time, so just very quickly, who was our spokesperson? We don't want to leave you out.
I'm pleased to see companies here who really imbibe and really take care of this initiative. But I think we've all worked for companies who talk about it at the top, but it never kind of flows down to the organization. And we talked about accountability and holding leaders accountable, which Vanessa, you at Praxair, you have it. It sounds like you have it built into your performance management system. And I'd also like to see employees held accountable. So if you are a diverse candidate, we, as companies need to create safe environments for people so they have the opportunity to speak or to come out or whatever it is that they need, but creating that environment. But I think accountability is one of the biggest things that we miss every time we launch something. And it doesn't only happen with diversity, but it's with other things.
Absolutely.
We don't hold people accountable.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you. I've got to look. Aren't you glad you came out tonight? Yeah. I thought so. We are just about out of time. Do we have time for a question or two?
Yeah, take one or two questions.
Okay.
And then we'll get close to 8 o'clock, so.
Oh, okay. We have a question here.
This might be more of an opinion-based question for the panelists, but we talked a lot about the business case about including diversity and inclusion, but even in an ideal world, what would you consider the next avenue or the next target for inclusion and diversity, aside from the business case? If that makes sense.
When you say target, do you mean a certain group? Or
No, I mean, like rather than just making a business case, like in terms of, that's kind of what I've gathered is that in order to get people on board with it, the business case was made, and maybe what in an ideal world would be the next best, or not the next best, but just any even, to include the next diversity inclusion. Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah.
I'm
You know,
sorry.
I think that, I think that for every organization, it really varies. It depends on what your strategy is and what your needs are. I don't think that there's one answer. I think you can't boil the ocean, so we can't, get there quickly in one day. So it's a matter of figuring out what is going to create the most leverage for a specific organization. Gender is one of the areas that a lot of organizations focus on because women are more than half of the population, and that's a common characteristic around the world. And ethnicity doesn't play out the same way in different parts of the world. But what is it? Are you a consumer-facing organization where you need to reach out to specific populations? I think really the answer is that it depends on what is the business strategy, and then figuring out where is the avenue that's where you're going to be able to move the needle in some substantial ways, and it's going to link to what the strategic aspiration of the organization is.
Thank you. One last question? Okay, let's see. Maybe we'll take two last questions.
Thank you very much for your contributions tonight. My question is around succession planning. I was at another discussion last week where a CEO of a corporation had the opportunity to replace a lot of her C-suite and was looking forward to changing it from an all-male board to have more vice presidents of different diversities, especially around women, and not one female candidate stepped forward and applied for a position. How are you looking at your succession planning to make sure that your diverse candidates are being asked as well as that they're stepping forward?
I think, and I'll make it brief so you can type in. I think from a talent perspective, the question is, how are we, for us, are we preparing them to be, and are we, to what my colleague said, I think she just stepped out, do we have a speak-up culture that encourages the individual to be able to say things that are out of the expectations. So one, I think the culture has to be ready. So taking an action, it gets at what Vanessa was saying, to wipe out a leadership team and then say, okay, everyone can post for new jobs, or we're going to do that. If I look up there and I know it's the same old stuff and nothing's changing, I don't want to be a part of that. So what have they changed to do that? So I think when we make these, what I consider dramatic changes, does the culture shift that you're trying to achieve match the organizational shift that you've forced in the box,
Last question. We're running out of time.
That's okay, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
I'll take the other question.
What are some of your suggestions for organizations that are working very successfully around DI, but their mentality is just white and black? What do you do with them so that they can be more strategic in including the LGBT community, the disabled community, the generational gaps that we have, the religious groups that want to be to the top? So as we think of succession planning and we think of leadership advancement, some organizations, some that I work in as an external consultant, only think about black and white, leaving out the majority of the group, which happens not to be black and white if you compile everybody together. So what suggestions do you have?
Going back to what Margaret said, I think, first of all, it goes back to
how your company strategically views diversity. So when I first came into the role, I sort of did my own research online to just benchmark what our competitors were doing. And then I went to my CEO with a plan. And one of the things I said to him is that we're not embracing LGBTs in our diversity conversation or people with disabilities. What are your thoughts? I want to make sure that he and I were aligned in terms of the platform. And at first, he said, oh, that's interesting. I said, that's the best practices. And I think maybe one of the things to do is to do some benchmarking, just to be able to bring best practices to your leaders to say, this is what other companies are doing. And to go back to the training that I spoke about earlier, we are now, just to get everybody on board with this whole D&I journey, part of our training, the first exercise we do is to talk about diversity dimensions in everyone. And we do an exercise where everyone at the table, it could be a table of all white males, talk about their different diversity dimensions in terms of where they're from, their background, where they went to school, what kind of education they have, and so on, just to show and prove that there's diversity in all of us, and that it does add to the conversation. Different perspectives can come from other things besides race and gender. So it goes back to strategy, training, and just probably doing some benchmarking and being able to present what other companies are doing, because that old paradigm is not the way that the leading companies are doing it anymore.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the mic over because I think I've taken up all the time. But I want to thank you all for your participation.
Well, thank you. For those of you who know me, you know how much I care about this. And for those of you in the room, there are about 40 plus of us here. There are 76 peering in, not able to answer a question. So next month, come and join us. Everybody wave. So thank you for joining us online. Thank you for tonight. Now, we've got a couple of things we need to just pay attention to, because Right Management has a drawing for a free session with a career coach. And so there's a basket coming around with Elena, and just drop your card in there, and then we'll draw it, and we'll have a drawing for Right Management. We also have another basket that's coming around with Dorota for a free meeting. So if you think this one was good, drop your card in, because you get a chance for a free meeting. We pull it tonight. You'll know before you leave. A special thank you to the panel, because they were fabulous. We understand why they're award winners. We really do. Now, just one more note that's personal to me. In 2010, when I lost my job working for Pfizer, I went to Right Management. And so thank you to Right Management, because it's nothing like being an ex-client given a little, And one of the first people I talked to was Nancy DeDeer, who was on a diversity panel with the Society of, with SHRM. And so Nancy reached out one person at a time and reached out to me, so thank you. So this is like, she wondered why I gave her a big hug when I saw her, because I remembered 4 years ago. So thank you for tonight. Please drop your card in. And a special thank you to SHRM, because they helped publicize this, and they are our sister chapter. There's so much that we do together that's stronger because of both of us. Finally, and you see the power of the team, Sissy's reminding me of the evaluations on your table. There's it's a half page. Make sure you complete it. We read them very carefully, and we compile all of this for our July strategy meeting. So what you write, we read and then respond to. So thank you very much. Dorota, anything more on these?
Anybody else? For free?
So before I pull those cards, a special thank you to Vanessa for driving this. Veronica, I'm sorry. That's a reading issue, really. For Veronica, for organizing so much of and driving the panel discussion tonight. So truly, thank you. In the back, just a reminder, there's great information from Wright. There's more information on diversity on that table over there, and then there's the resource table for those who want. This poll is for a free whatever meeting this is called. And this goes to DA. There you go. Hold on to that and make sure Dorota knows who you are. Matt, you're going to poll? Super. Oh, I get to read it. Brett Dunbar. Oh, there you go. I think there was something going on because they're sitting next to each other. The last thing I just want to remind you about is on May 19th, May 19th? Yes, May 19th is our next meeting, and it's going to be just fabulous. It's a series of learning leaders. It's a panel discussion talking about today's challenges in leadership development. So it really gives you a good idea of what we're looking forward to and the ideas of how to handle those issues. So thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. Great meeting. See you next month. And farewell to all of those who missed the fabulous dinner. Good night.